Mina was a quiet young woman who worked as a cleaner in the community center. She was soft-spoken, polite, and always kept her eyes low when people talked to her. Every morning she swept the long hallways, cleaned the chairs, and dusted the shelves without anyone paying attention to her. People saw her every day, but no one really noticed her. To them, she was just the girl with the cleaning cart. Nothing more inside the community center. There was a beautiful music room with a shiny black piano placed in the center. Whenever Mina passed by the room, she would slow down for a moment. She liked listening to the sound of the piano when someone practiced. The notes felt warm to her, almost like a memory she had forgotten, but she never went inside. She always watched from the doorway and then quickly walked away. One Saturday afternoon, the center was hosting a small gathering. People from the neighborhood were invited. There were snacks, chairs arranged in rows, and at the front, a young man named Leo sat at the piano. Leo was popular, confident, and loved showing off his musical talent. He pressed the keys loudly, making sure everyone heard him. Mina entered the room quietly to throw the trash from the corner. She tried not to disturb anyone, but Leo noticed her. He smirked and said loudly, "Careful, don't touch the piano. It might break if you try to play it." People laughed, not because the joke was funny, but because Leo said it. Mina froze for a moment. His words were like a small sting in her heart. She didn't want to look at anyone. She didn't want them to see the embarrassment in her eyes. She lowered her head and walked toward the trash bin. Inside her chest, she felt a heaviness. Mina had been judged like this many times in her life. People always assumed she was weak, simple, or unskilled just because of her job or her quiet nature. She was used to it, but that did not mean it hurt any less. She kept her face calm, but her heart was shaking a little. In the corner of the room, an old woman sitting in a chair watched everything. She didn't laugh. Instead, she leaned forward, studying Mina with curious eyes. It was as if she sensed something the others could not see. After throwing the trash away, Mina slowly walked toward the door. She wanted to leave quickly. She did not want to hear another joke. But Leo called out again, "Hey, maybe you should try one note. At least give us a good laugh." More chuckles filled the room. Mina's throat tightened for a moment. She hated being the center of attention, especially like this. She quietly said, "I am just working," and walked out with her cleaning cart. Outside the room, she took a deep breath. The laughter still echoed in her mind. But hidden under that sound was another memory. A memory of her as a little girl sitting beside a small wooden piano her mother had bought from a thrift shop. Her mother used to guide her fingers, teaching her simple melodies. Those times were peaceful. But life changed, responsibilities came, and she stopped playing completely. Later that evening, when the gathering ended, Mina returned to clean the room. The place was now empty. The chairs were messy, cups were left on tables, and the piano sat quietly in the center, like a sleeping giant. Mina moved slowly, collecting cups and wiping tables. As she walked past the piano, she hesitated. Her heart whispered something she had not heard in years. She wasn't sure what pulled her toward the instrument. Maybe it was the hurt from earlier. Maybe it was the silence of the room. Or maybe it was the memory of her mother's hands on hers. She looked around, making sure no one was watching. Then she sat carefully on the piano bench. It felt strange, familiar, and frightening at the same time. Her fingers trembled as she raised her hand above the keys. She told herself she would only touch the piano once. Just one note, nothing more, when she pressed the key. The sound that came out was soft, gentle, and full of emotion. The single note filled the empty room like a small spark of light. Mina closed her eyes for a moment, letting that one sound travel through her heart. She felt something she had not felt in years, a small piece of herself returning. But she didn't know someone had walked back into the room. It was Leo. He had forgotten his jacket and returned to get it. The moment he heard that one note, he stopped walking. His eyes widened. That sound did not come from a beginner. It came from someone who carried music inside them. He watched Mina from behind, completely stunned. The girl he made fun of, the girl he assumed knew nothing about music, was sitting at the piano like someone who belonged there. That single note was enough to silence every joke he had made. It was enough to change his expression from amusement to confusion. Mina slowly opened her eyes and pulled her hand back. She stood up quickly, afraid she had done something wrong. But before she could leave, Leo spoke softly. Without any joke in his voice, did you learn to play like that? Her heart beat faster. She didn't answer. She simply lowered her eyes, turned away, and walked out of the room. But one thing was now certain. That day when everyone laughed at her, something else had begun. Something much bigger than anyone in that room expected. That one note had awakened a hidden part of her life. And it was only the beginning. Mina could not sleep that night. She kept thinking about the way Leo looked at her after hearing that one note. It was not a look of teasing this time. It was a look of disbelief. Almost like he had discovered something impossible. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why one simple sound had shaken her so much. In the darkness, she remembered her childhood again. Memories she normally tried to forget came back quietly. She saw herself as a little girl, sitting on a small wooden stool. Her mother beside her, teaching her how to place her fingers gently on the piano keys. Her mother always said, "Music is a gift, Mina. Never let anyone tell you that you are less," but life had a cruel way of making people forget their gifts. Her mother passed away when she was still young after that. Mina had to leave school and work small jobs to support her family. The piano in their home was sold to pay rent. She never touched an instrument again. Years passed, and the world shaped her into a silent girl who moved like a shadow, working, surviving, and hiding her dreams. That single note she played yesterday felt like meeting her younger self again. The next morning, Mina arrived at the community center early. She always started her shifts before most people came. She pushed her cleaning cart quietly through the halls, trying to pretend nothing unusual had happened. But inside her chest, a nervous feeling kept growing. She hoped Leo would forget what he heard. She hoped everyone would leave her alone. She wanted no attention, no questions, no pressure. But destiny rarely listened to such prayers as she turned a corner. She saw the old woman from the previous day, sitting on a bench near the music room. The same gentle eyes watched her again. The woman smiled kindly and waved her over. Mina hesitated, but walked toward her slowly. "My dear," the woman said in a soft voice. "I heard you play last night." Mina froze. Her heartbeat quickened. "It was only one note," she whispered nervously. "One note can tell more than 1,000 words," the old woman replied with a warm smile. "You have music inside you. Don't hide it." Mina lowered her eyes and shook her head. "People will laugh," she said quietly. The old woman leaned forward, her hands resting on her cane. "They laugh because they don't know who you really are." "But I saw it yesterday. You are not ordinary." Before Mina could respond, they heard footsteps. Leo was walking down the hallway toward them. He looked different today. His usual confident smile was gone. Replaced by an unsure expression, he stopped in front of Mina and scratched the back of his neck. "Hey," he said softly, "can we talk?" Mina froze again. She wanted to walk away, but that would seem rude. So she nodded slowly. Leo gestured for her to follow him into the empty music room. The old woman smiled encouragingly as Mina followed Leo with small, hesitant steps. Inside the music room, Leo closed the door gently. He turned to her and said, "Listen, I'm sorry about yesterday." Mina looked down at the floor. She did not know what to say. "I shouldn't have made fun of you," he continued. "I didn't know you could play." Her voice was soft but steady. "I don't play anymore." Leo walked toward the piano and placed his hand on it lightly. "Then what was that sound yesterday?" Mina swallowed hard. She did not know how to explain it. It was one note, but it came from years of silent dreams and old memories. She took a small breath and said, "I used to learn when I was a child. My mother taught me." Leo's eyes softened. "She must have been a good teacher," he said gently, "because that note was not something a beginner could make." Mina felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. She shook her head. "No, it wasn't anything special." Leo stepped back and looked at her with sincere eyes. "Mina, it was special, and I'm not saying this to tease you." She looked away. Feeling nervous, "I want you to try something," he said softly, pointing at the piano bench. "Just one note or a small melody. Anything you remember?" Mina backed away immediately. "No, I can't. People will laugh." Leo shook his head. There's no one here now. Just try." Her hands trembled slightly. She felt trapped between fear and an old longing. She turned toward the piano, remembering the old woman's words, remembering her mother's smile, remembering how that single note had made her heart feel alive again. She approached the piano slowly, like someone approaching something sacred. She sat on the bench carefully, her fingers hovered above the keys, but did not touch them. Leo waited silently behind her. He could sense the battle happening inside her. A battle between courage and fear. Finally, with a trembling breath, Mina pressed one key, then another, and slowly a small melody formed. It was broken, soft, but it carried emotion like a fragile memory trying to breathe again. Leo listened, stunned once more. Her simple tune had more soul than all his complicated performances. When she finished, Mina stood up quickly. "I shouldn't have done that," she whispered, ready to leave. But Leo stepped forward and said something she never expected. "Mina, you have a real gift. Please don't hide it anymore." Her throat tightened with emotion. No one had said such words to her in years. Maybe never. She walked toward the door slowly, feeling confused, scared, but also strangely hopeful. Something inside her had woken up, and deep down, she knew this was only the beginning, not the end. The next day arrived with a strange heaviness in Mina's heart. She pushed her cleaning cart through the community center as usual, but her mind was far away. She kept remembering the melody she had played yesterday, the small tune that had escaped her fingers like a secret she never meant to reveal. She had not planned to touch the piano again, yet she could still feel the keys under her fingertips. Leo's words echoed in her mind. "You have a real gift." No one had said something like that to her in years. Mina was not used to compliments, not used to people noticing anything good in her. So instead of feeling proud, she felt scared. What if yesterday was just a mistake? What if she disappointed everyone if they heard her again by noon? The community center was busy with another small event. People moved in and out of the rooms, carrying trays, balloons, and decorations. Leo was organizing the setup for a small evening performance. He was supposed to play the piano again, but his mind was not fully there. His thoughts kept going back to Mina. He wondered how someone so quiet, so invisible to others, could have such a powerful touch on a piano. He felt guilty for how he treated her. But he also felt curious. He wanted to hear more. Not for entertainment, but because he sensed something real in her music. Something he didn't have. As Mina cleaned the hallway outside the music room, she heard Leo practicing inside. His notes were loud and confident as always. But today she could hear something else. He kept making small mistakes. He was distracted. She tried to walk past quietly, but Leo's voice called out, "Mina, wait." She stopped slowly. Turning around with hesitation, Leo walked toward her, wiping his hands on his shirt nervously. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Don't worry." "I'm not teasing." Mina stayed quiet, holding the handle of her cleaning cart tightly. "There's another performance today," he said carefully, "and I was thinking, maybe you could play something." Her heart dropped instantly. She shook her head quickly. "No, I can't do that." Leo stepped closer. "You can. You're better than you think." Mina took a step back, fear rising in her chest. "People will laugh," she whispered. "Yesterday was only a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," Leo said firmly. "You have real talent, and people need to hear it." Mina lowered her eyes. As much as she wanted to believe him, the fear inside her was too heavy. She had been judged her whole life. Being laughed at felt more familiar than being praised. Before Leo could say more, the old woman from yesterday approached them slowly with her cane. Her warm eyes rested on Mina. "My dear, fear is loud, but your music is louder," she said softly. "Don't let fear win." Mina's throat tightened. The old woman's voice was so gentle that it felt like her mother speaking again, a voice she had missed for years. Leo looked at the old woman, then at Mina. "Please," he said quietly. "Just think about it." Mina nodded weakly, not as a promise, but because she couldn't speak at that moment, she pushed her cart down the hallway. Her emotions tangled tightly inside her chest. For the rest of the afternoon, she tried to avoid the music room. She cleaned the storage areas, the hallways, the restrooms, anything to keep her away from the piano. but the sound still reached her, the faint echo of the keys calling her name. When the event began in the evening, people filled the chairs and talked excitedly. Leo sat at the piano, but he looked restless. He kept glancing at the door, hoping Mina might appear. The old woman sat in the front row, her eyes calm and expectant, behind the stage curtain. Hidden from everyone, Mina stood silently. Her hands were shaking, her feet did not want to move forward. But her heart did not want to walk away either. She could hear Leo starting his performance. His fingers hit the keys, but his music lacked emotion today. The old woman noticed it too. She leaned toward the person next to her and whispered, "His heart is not in the notes." Mina's chest felt tight. She hated this feeling. She felt pulled in two directions. She took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the curtain slowly. Leo saw her instantly. His eyes widened with surprise and hope. He stopped playing in the middle of a note. The room turned silent for a moment. Everyone looked at her, confused. Mina walked toward the piano with small, shaky steps. She did not look at the audience. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. Her heart beat so loudly she could hear it. Leo moved aside from the bench and whispered, "You came." She nodded slowly. Unable to speak, she sat on the piano bench. Her hands trembling above the keys, the entire room watched her, expecting a mistake, a wrong note, or maybe something funny to laugh at. Mina closed her eyes for one long moment. In her mind, she saw her mother's face, the small wooden piano, the gentle hands guiding hers, the quiet joy she used to feel. Then, with a trembling breath, she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. Not one note, not a broken melody like yesterday, but a full piece, soft, emotional, filled with every silent year she had carried music inside her heart. The room fell completely silent. People forgot their conversations, forgot their phones, forgot even to breathe. Her music flowed like water, gentle but powerful, fragile but deep. Leo stood behind her, stunned. This was not just talent. This was soul. When Mina finished, the room stayed silent for 1 second. Then another. Then suddenly, applause exploded everywhere. People clapped loudly, stood up. Some even wiped tears from their eyes, but Mina did not look proud. She looked shocked. She had expected laughter. Not this. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. She did not know how to handle so much emotion, so much attention, and in that moment, her life changed again, even if she didn't realize it yet. The simple girl everyone ignored had become the center of the room. Not because of her job, not because of pity, but because she was extraordinary, and the world had just discovered it. The room was still shaking from applause when Mina slowly stood up from the piano bench. Her hands were trembling, not from playing, but from the shock of everything happening around her. She had expected the worst. She had expected people to laugh at her, or whisper about her, or point fingers because she was just the cleaner. But instead, they were clapping for her, clapping so loudly it almost felt unreal. Mina stepped back nervously, unsure what to do. She had never stood in front of a crowd like this, never received this kind of attention. She felt exposed. Like all her hidden memories and buried dreams had suddenly been placed under a bright spotlight. She didn't know if she wanted to run, or cry, or disappear. Leo walked toward her slowly, his eyes full of something she had not seen in him before. Respect. "Mina," he whispered. That was beautiful, but she didn't respond. Her heart was beating too fast. Her chest felt tight. The old woman from the front row struggled to stand up, leaning heavily on her cane. People parted to make space for her as she approached the stage. Her gentle eyes never left Mina when she reached her. She placed her wrinkled hand on Mina's arm and said softly, "My dear child, you just reminded everyone what real music feels like." Mina's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this, but before she could speak, the audience clapped again, louder this time. People were asking questions, calling her name, wanting to know who she was, where she learned to play, and if she had more songs, but Mina felt overwhelmed. Too overwhelmed, she whispered, I need to go," and quickly stepped off the stage. She rushed through the hallway, her footsteps fast and unsure. She didn't want anyone to follow her. She needed air, space, silence. She pushed open the back door of the building and stepped outside into the cold evening breeze. The air felt sharp against her skin, but it helped her breathe again. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. Moments later, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Leo gently opened the door and peeked outside. He didn't step out right away, as if he didn't want to scare her. "Mina," he said softly, "are you okay?" She nodded slowly, though she wasn't sure if it was true. Leo stepped outside and leaned against the wall beside her. Keeping a respectful distance, for a moment, they both stayed quiet, listening to the muffled sound of the crowd still talking inside. Finally, Mina whispered, "I didn't expect that." Leo smiled gently. "No one did. Not even me. I shouldn't have played," she said in a trembling voice. "People will start expecting things from me. I won't be able to do it again." Leo shook his head softly. "You don't owe anyone anything. But you owe yourself the truth." Mina looked at him with confused eyes. He continued, "You love. And you hid that for too long?" A small silence grew between them. Mina looked down at her hands, the same hands that used to play simple songs beside her mother. The same hands that had cleaned floors for years. She whispered, "I stopped because life got hard." Leo looked at her with understanding. "Life gets hard for everyone, but you still have the gift, Mina. You didn't lose it." Tears formed in her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "People only see me as the cleaner," she said. "No one believes I can do anything more." Leo shook his head firmly. "You proved them wrong tonight." Mina didn't know how to respond. Behind her fear, there was a tiny spark of something else, a small hope, a dream she had forgotten, a voice inside her whispering that maybe, just maybe, she could be more. Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper. "I wrote something earlier," he said shyly. "I wasn't sure if I should show you, but—" Here, Mina took the paper and opened it carefully. Her eyes widened as she saw the words scribbled across it, a duet idea for Mina and Leo. She looked up in shock. A duet. She whispered. Leo nodded nervously. "I wanted to ask if you would perform a duet with me at next month's community event." Mina's breath caught. She stepped back slightly. "No, I can't." "I won't do that, Mina. Listen," Leo said gently. "You don't have to agree right now. But think about it, please. You have something rare, something that deserves to be heard." Before she could answer, the back door opened again, and the old woman stepped outside. Her warm eyes settled on Mina first, then Leo. "You two sound like children whispering secrets," she said with a small laugh. Both Mina and Leo straightened instantly. The old woman walked toward Mina, placed both hands on her shoulders, and said, "Child, music chooses its people. And tonight, music chose you again." Mina swallowed hard. Her voice cracked. "I'm scared." The old woman nodded gently. "Good courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing something even when fear is loud." Mina closed her eyes, letting the words sink into her heart. Each word felt like a gentle push, a reminder of her mother's love. A reminder of who she used to be. After a long silence, Mina whispered, "I will think about it." Both Leo and the old woman smiled softly that night when Mina walked home. Something felt different. The streets were the same. Her small apartment was the same. Her life on the outside didn't change. But something inside her had shifted. Her music, the part of her she had buried deep. It was awake again, and this time, it wasn't going back to sleep. Mina woke up the next morning feeling a new kind of heaviness. Not the tired heaviness she felt after long cleaning shifts, but the emotional heaviness that comes when a person stands between the past and the future. She sat at the edge of her small bed, staring at her hands. The same hands that had surprised an entire room the previous night. The memory of the applause kept replaying in her mind. It felt unreal, like something that had happened to someone else, not her. She had spent years blending into the background, working quietly, never drawing attention. But now, people looked at her differently. She was no longer invisible, and that frightened her more than anything. As she dressed for work, she tried to prepare herself for whatever reaction she might face that day. Would people stare? Would they ask her to play again? Would they expect something she could not give? She took a deep breath and headed to the community center. Clutching the small hope in her chest and the fear beside it, the moment she entered the building, she noticed people looking at her. But their expressions were different, softer, kinder, almost admiring. A few people smiled at her. Someone whispered, "That's the girl who played last night," another person said. "She's amazing." Mina felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment, and she quickly lowered her eyes. Pushing her cleaning cart as fast as she could, she did not want attention. She just wanted to work quietly like before. But things were no longer the same. Inside the music room, Leo was already there, sitting at the piano with a thoughtful expression. He stood up the moment he saw her, Mina. He said with genuine warmth, "I'm glad you came." She nodded slightly. Unsure what to say, Leo walked closer, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. "I know yesterday was overwhelming for you," he said gently, "but I want to say thank you." Mina blinked with confusion. "For what?" she whispered. "For reminding everyone what real talent looks like," he replied softly. "For reminding me." She looked away quickly. "I didn't do anything big," she said quietly. "You did more than you think," Leo answered. "People felt your music, Mina. They felt it here." He placed his hand over his chest. She didn't know how to respond, so she remained silent. Leo opened the folded paper he had shown her yesterday. The paper with the duet idea. He held it gently like it was something precious. "I worked on it last night," he said. "I wrote the left-hand part for me and the right-hand part for you. You don't have to play anything difficult. Just follow your heart." Mina felt panic rise inside her. "I can't do duets," she said quickly. "I can't perform again." "Yesterday was only an accident." Leo shook his head slowly. "It wasn't an accident, and I won't push you, but—" He hesitated, then looked directly into her eyes. "You deserve a chance to see what you're capable of," before Mina could answer. The old woman entered the room, leaning on her cane. Her warm eyes sparkled as she saw Mina standing near the piano. "Good," she said with a smile. "The piano was waiting for you." Mina shook her head shyly. "I'm only here to clean," the old woman chuckled softly. "Child, you can sweep the floors later. Right now, sweep the dust from your heart." Mina's breath caught. The old woman always spoke in ways that touched her deeply. Leo stepped aside and said, "Play anything, just one melody. You don't have to impress anyone." "Not even me," Mina hesitated. She looked at the piano, then down at her hands. Her heart pounded. But something inside her slowly pushed her forward, a tiny spark of courage. She walked toward the piano and sat down carefully. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Trembling with doubt, the room was silent. Leo watched her with quiet respect, and the old woman stood behind her like a gentle guardian. Finally, Mina pressed a key. Then another, and slowly, a soft melody flowed out. It was not the same as the one she played last night. This one was gentler, almost fragile. Like a whisper of her childhood, the old woman closed her eyes. Letting the music sink into her soul, Leo watched in awe. Realizing something deeper, Mina didn't play like someone trying to impress. She played like someone sharing a piece of their heart. When she finished, Mina pulled her hands back quickly. "I can't do more," she whispered. "I'm scared." The old woman stepped forward and placed her warm hand on Mina's shoulder. "My dear, fear is not your enemy," she whispered. "Fear is your shadow, and shadows only appear when there is light." Mina felt her eyes fill with tears. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "What if I fail?" she said quietly. "What if people laugh again?" Leo walked closer, his voice gentle. "Mina, even if you fail. You fail trying something beautiful, and no one will laugh." "Not this time." Mina looked at both of them. Then at the piano again, something inside her softened. Something she had locked away for years. She whispered, "I will think about the duet." Leo smiled, not pushing further. "That's all I can ask." The old woman tapped her cane lightly on the floor. "Good. The first step is never easy, but you already took it," as Mina left the room to continue her cleaning tasks. She felt lighter than before. Her heart still carried fear, but it also carried possibility, and for the first time in many years, she didn't feel like a girl who lived in the shadows. She felt like someone walking toward the light. One small step at a time, and the world was beginning to notice. The next week brought changes Mina never expected. The community center, which once felt like a place where she only worked quietly in the background, now felt different. People who used to walk past her without even noticing her were now smiling warmly. Some even stopped to say, "You played beautifully," or "We didn't know you had such talent." Mina always replied with a shy nod. Her eyes lowered. Her heart felt soft whenever she heard those words, but also nervous. Attention was something she had spent her whole life avoiding. Now it followed her everywhere like a gentle shadow. Leo, too, was different these days. He no longer teased her, no longer made jokes to impress the crowd. Instead, he became patient, gentle, even protective. He came early every morning just to tune the piano or practice softly, as if waiting to see if Mina might walk by, and one day she did. She walked into the room carrying her cleaning supplies. Trying to slip in quietly, Leo looked up from the piano and smiled. "Good morning," he said. Mina hesitated. "Good morning," she whispered back. Leo stood up and said, "I wrote something new." He held up another sheet of music paper, covered in pencil markings and notes. "It's still a duet, but simpler. I thought it might be easier for you." Mina's stomach tightened. She never imagined someone would write music for her. It felt unreal, too beautiful, too unbelievable. "I don't know if I can," she said softly. Leo didn't push her. "Maybe not today," he said. "Maybe another day." Whenever you're ready, he placed the sheet gently on the piano, as if leaving a gift behind. Mina looked at the paper for a moment, curiosity flickering in her eyes. She didn't touch it, but she didn't walk away either. Something inside her wanted to try, but fear still held her tightly. Later that afternoon, Mina was cleaning the hallway when she heard soft footsteps behind her. The old woman appeared again, leaning on her cane. Her eyes sparkled with the same quiet knowing as always. "You've been thinking a lot," the old woman said gently. Mina nodded slowly. "I don't know what to do about the duet," the woman said, not even needing to ask. Mina sighed. "I'm scared I'll disappoint everyone," the old woman smiled. "Child, no one who follows their heart disappoints the world." Mina looked down, her fingers twisting nervously. "I don't even know if I'm good enough." The old woman tapped her cane lightly and said, "Good enough for who? For the people who laughed at you? Or for the music waiting inside your soul?" Those words hit Mina deeply. She felt something stir inside her, a small push, a small courage, like a tiny flame that evening. After everyone had left, Mina walked by the music room again. The lights were off, the hall was quiet, but she could see the piano inside through the small glass window. Her heart thumped softly. She knew she could walk away. Pretend none of this mattered. Pretend she was still the invisible cleaner who swept floors and hid her dreams. But she wasn't that person anymore. She pushed the door open slowly. The room smelled faintly of wood polish and old memories. The piano stood there quietly. Almost waiting for her, Mina walked toward the bench. Her steps slow and unsure. She sat down, her breath trembling. She looked at the duet sheet Leo left behind. The one he wrote just for her. She touched it gently, tracing the pencil lines with her fingertip. Then she placed it on the stand, her hands shaking. She took a deep breath and pressed a key. The sound echoed softly in the empty room. Then she pressed another, then another. Forming the first few notes of the duet, her playing was uncertain at first, but the melody slowly began to make sense. It was simple, gentle, warm, like a soft conversation between two hearts. What she didn't know was that Leo was standing quietly outside the door. He had returned to pick up his backpack, only to find Mina sitting at the piano, practicing his music. He didn't interrupt. He simply watched through the small window, a soft smile forming on his face for Mina. Playing alone felt like rediscovering a piece of herself she thought was gone forever. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Music didn't judge her. It welcomed her, embraced her, reminded her who she was. When she finished the last note, she sat still for a long time. Listening to the silence that followed, it felt peaceful, comforting, like a blanket of calm around her heart. Leo quietly stepped away from the door, not wanting her to know he had seen her. He wanted her to have that moment for herself, The next morning, when Mina arrived, Leo was already waiting with a gentle smile. "Do you want to practice together today?" he asked softly. Mina looked at him, her eyes shy but brighter than before, and for the first time, she nodded without hesitation. At that moment, something changed forever. She was no longer the girl who hid her music. No longer the girl who walked in the shadows. She took her seat beside Leo, placing her hands gently on the piano, and together, they began to play the first notes of a new beginning, a beginning she never believed she deserved, but one she was finally brave enough to accept. The days that followed felt different for Mina. Each morning she arrived at the community center with a nervous excitement in her heart, something she had never felt before. The building that once felt large and cold now felt warm, almost alive, because music had returned to her life every day. After finishing part of her cleaning shift, Mina would slip quietly into the music room where Leo was waiting. Sometimes he had new notes written for her. Sometimes he just wanted her to practice the duet, and sometimes he simply listened, letting her play whatever her heart wanted to say. Leo watched Mina carefully, noticing how she grew a little braver each day. Her fingers became steadier, her playing smoother, and her eyes more confident. She still hesitated sometimes, still doubted herself. But the girl who once feared touching the piano was slowly disappearing. Replaced by someone stronger, the old woman visited them often too. She would sit in a chair near the window, her cane resting beside her, and her wise eyes following Mina's hands with pride. She never said much, just offered gentle smiles and small pieces of advice that felt like golden seeds, planting courage in Mina's heart. One afternoon, while Mina practiced the duet, Leo stopped her gently. "Mina," he said, "try playing the second part a little louder. Let your voice be heard." Mina paused, nervous. "But what if it doesn't sound good?" Leo smiled. "It will. You just need to trust yourself." She took a small breath and played again, this time letting her fingers press the keys with more strength. The melody became fuller, richer, something that filled the entire room. The old woman closed her eyes and whispered, "There she is," as if she had been waiting for this exact moment. Mina finished the section and looked up shyly. Expecting criticism instead, Leo said softly, "That was perfect." His words made her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to praise, not even small praise. But something inside her felt lighter, like a window had opened inside her chest. Letting sunlight in, the duet began taking shape. Each day they added a little more, refined a section, repeated a difficult part, or simply blended their playing until it sounded like two voices telling one story. Mina always looked surprised when they finished, amazed at how beautiful their combined music sounded. A week later, Leo approached her with a flyer in his hand. His eyes sparkled with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. "Mina," he said, "this is the announcement for next month's evening event." She took the paper carefully. Reading the bold words at the top, "Community Music Night featuring new talents," her heart skipped a beat. She knew what Leo wanted to ask before he even spoke. "Mina," he said gently, "would you perform the duet with me at this event?" Her breath caught. The room felt suddenly quiet, heavier. The air around her thickened with fear and possibility. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "People will be watching." Leo nodded, understanding. "I know. But they'll be watching because they want to hear you, not judge you." Mina looked down at her hands, remembering the applause from the last performance, remembering the tears she had shed after playing alone, remembering how it felt like her entire world had cracked open, revealing a piece of her she had buried for years. The old woman walked slowly toward them, leaning on her cane. She looked at Mina with soft eyes and said, "My dear, you do not hide a diamond in the dark." Mina felt her chest tighten. "But what if I make a mistake?" The old woman smiled. "Then the world will hear a real human moment," Leo added gently. "Mina, no musician plays perfectly, but you play honestly. And that is worth more." Mina's eyes filled with tears. She didn't cry because she was sad. She cried because people believed in her, something she was still learning to accept. She wiped her tears and whispered, "I will try." Those simple words were enough to change everything. Leo smiled, relieved and happy. "Thank you," he said softly. "We'll practice together every day until the event." And they did, day after day. Mina grew more confident. Her fingers danced across the keys, her music carried emotion, and her heart learned how to trust the sound inside her. Sometimes they laughed when they made mistakes. Sometimes they argued gently about a rhythm. Sometimes they sat quietly, letting the silence settle like soft dust. But every moment brought them closer, not just musically, but as to people who understood each other's hearts in ways words could not express. People at the community center began gathering outside the music room door. Listening quietly, some whispered, "She's amazing," others said, "Their duet sounds magical." Mina heard those whispers, but tried not to think about them. She didn't want pressure. She only wanted to play truly. From her heart, one evening, after a long practice session, Leo closed the piano lid softly and said, "Mina, do you know something?" She looked at him curiously. "You changed the way I see music," he said gently. "I used to play to impress, but you play to feel, and it reminds me why I started playing in the first place." Mina lowered her eyes. Touched by his words, she whispered, "Music saved me once. I think it's saving me again," Leo nodded, "and soon it will save someone else who hears you." Mina wasn't sure about that, but she felt something warm settle in her chest. A quiet courage growing like a small flame. She took a deep breath and said softly, "Let's be ready for the event." Leo smiled. "We will." And so the days continued. Practice after practice. Note after note. Courage building slow but steady. Until Mina began to believe something she never thought possible, that her music didn't just belong to her past. It belonged to her future too. The night of the community event arrived quietly. But for Mina, it felt like a storm was forming inside her chest. All day she had been nervous, barely able to eat, barely able to speak. She kept wondering if she had made a mistake agreeing to perform. She stood backstage wearing her simple clothes, her hands shaking. Her heart beat so loudly she thought the audience might hear it from the next room. She looked down at her fingers, the same fingers that had learned music as a child. The same fingers that had cleaned floors for years. The same fingers that had somehow found their way back to the piano again. Leo noticed her trembling and approached her gently. "It's okay to be scared," he said softly. "I'm scared too." Mina looked up with surprise. Leo always seemed confident, always smiling, always sure of himself. "You?" she whispered. "Scared?" Leo laughed nervously. "Of course, this time it's different. This time the music actually matters to me." She didn't say anything, but his words warmed her heart. The old woman joined them a moment later, leaning on her cane. Her wise eyes studied Mina with calm affection. "My dear," she said gently, "do you know what happens when a bird leaves its cage for the first time?" Mina shook her head slowly. "It trembles," the woman said with a soft smile. "But it flies anyway." Those words sank into Mina's heart like sunlight melting frost. The event hall was packed, more crowded than Mina had ever seen it. People sat eagerly, whispering, waiting. The program listed Leo's name, and next to it, in small letters, "Duet Performance Leo and Mina." Mina stared at the paper backstage. Her breath catching, seeing her name printed, felt unreal. She wondered if she deserved to be there, if she truly belonged on that stage. Before she could sink into fear again, Leo held out his hand. "Ready?" he whispered. Mina hesitated, then placed her trembling hand in his. Together they walked toward the stage. The lights dimmed, the audience quieted. Leo sat at the left side of the piano. Mina at the right, her knees shook under the bench. Her heart felt too heavy, too fast, too loud. Leo leaned closer and whispered, "Just breathe." She nodded slowly, her fingers hovering above the keys. Then the duet began. At first, Mina's notes were soft, almost shy, but Leo's steady playing guided her gently, like a hand helping someone cross a trembling bridge. The notes intertwined, touching, rising, falling, like two different voices telling one story. Halfway through the piece, something changed. Mina's fear began to fade, replaced by something stronger: connection. She felt the music inside her chest, flowing out through her fingers. She forgot the crowd, forgot the lights, forgot every fear she ever carried. It was just her and the piano, her and the melody, her and the memories of her mother's warm smile. Her notes grew stronger. Clearer, filled with life, the hall became silent. The kind of silence that only appears when something powerful is happening. Leo glanced at her, stunned by her transformation. He had never seen her play like this. It was raw emotion turned into music. The audience leaned forward, mesmerized. Some people even placed a hand over their hearts, not understanding why they felt so emotional, only knowing that her music touched them deeply. When the final note rang out, it echoed gently. Like a whisper fading into the stars, Mina's hands lifted slowly from the keys. For one long moment, there was nothing, no sound. No whisper, only stunned silence. Then the hall exploded with applause. Loud, thunderous, overwhelming. Mina's eyes widened in shock. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't used to people cheering for her. People stood from their seats, clapping, shouting, crying. The old woman wiped tears from her eyes, whispering, "Bravo, my child. Bravo." Leo stood up and gently took Mina's hand, raising it toward the audience. "This," he said softly to her, "is all for you?" Mina felt her heart fill with warmth she could barely contain. Her throat tightened with emotion. She whispered, "I didn't know I could do this." Leo smiled proudly. "You always could after the performance." People gathered around them, praising Mina, complimenting her, asking if she would perform again. She smiled shyly, overwhelmed but happy. She felt like she was finally stepping into a world she had only dreamed of. Later that night, when the crowd left and the lights dimmed, Mina stayed behind for a moment. She walked to the piano and touched the keys gently. The old woman approached her slowly, her cane tapping softly on the wooden floor. She stood beside Mina and whispered, "Your mother would be proud." Mina felt tears fill her eyes. She nodded silently, placing her hand over her heart. Leo joined them, smiling softly. "So," he asked, "ready for the next performance?" Mina looked at the piano. Then at both of them. She felt fear, but she felt courage too. And for the first time in her life, she believed in herself, with a soft, confident voice. She whispered, "Yes, I'm ready." She wasn't the invisible cleaner anymore. She wasn't the girl who hid her talent. She wasn't the woman who played one accidental note. She had become something else, a musician, a performer, a woman who found her voice again. And her journey with music, with courage, and with her newfound family was only just beginning.